We've got the Avengers with an all-star cast, tea dispensing dashboards, mechanical wasps, and a bunch of guys dressed like teddy bears. It's 1998's Avengers, but is it watchable? Thank you, pretend people praising profusely, and welcome everybody to Is It Watchable? I'm your host, Paul. Now, if you're still here after finding out that I'm not talking about Marvel's The Avengers, it's still not too late to click out of here. The 60s had it all. Free love, great music, cool cars, drugs, assassinations, racism, Vietnam. Okay, it wasn't all great, but their spy game was on point. I Spy, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Get Smart, Mission Impossible, Danger Man, The Prisoner, and those are just the television shows. The 60s also gave us a bunch of spy movies and even introduced us to the greatest spy of all time, Bond, James Bond. Now, I'm a proud American, but let's face it, when it comes to cool spies, no one can match our friends in the UK. Take the Avengers with debonair secret agent John Steed and his ever-changing cast of badass female partners. The show ran from 1961 to 1969, a bona fide hit at the time and a cult favorite to this day. So naturally, the reboot machine that is Hollywood decided to see if there's any money left in that account with a 1998 movie starring Ray Fiennes, Uma Thurman, and the great Sean Connery. Impressive cast. Shitty movie. We open on the dapper secret agent John Steed as he demonstrates how cool he is by breezing through a series of attacks where nobody appears to be trying very hard. The whole thing is part of a training exercise where apparently the goal is not to wrinkle your clothes. Meanwhile, the head of the ministry, codenamed Mother, learns that the weather shield protecting the UK from, I guess, weather has gone down. Then we're at weather scientist Emma Peel's place where she receives a fancy box containing a note that tells her to answer the phone.
Please answer the telephone.
What? She's told to go to Boodle's Gentlemen's Club, where we learn that apparently gentlemen's clubs in the UK are very different from gentlemen's clubs in the US. There she meets our man John Steed, sitting naked in a large room reading a newspaper. No clue.
You're not someone who plays by the rules, Doctor.
Rules are made to be broken.
The two go over to visit Mother at the ministry, where we find out that Emma Peel once worked on developing the weather shield that is actually a defense shield, and also that she appears to be the one that sabotaged it.
Looks like me, but it isn't.
You'll be allowed a privilege to prove your innocence.
If you didn't blow up Prospero, find out who did.
So they're putting their prime suspect in charge of her own investigation. Yeah. Once Steed and Peel are gone, Father, the ministry's second-in-command, walks in to give her opinion on the situation, but really it's just a lazy way to introduce a character who will figure more importantly later in the film. Then it's time for some exposition, as Mrs. Peel explains to Steed and the rest of us how she and other scientists worked on a project to artificially create weather systems, all while the two are fencing in a clothing store. Afterwards, the two hop in Steed's car and head for the countryside. Along the way, they enjoy some tea straight from the tap. Now, I'm not trying to be some social justice warrior or feel the need to come to the defense of our good friends across the pond, but I wonder, all you good people from the UK out there, does it become tiresome or even a little insulting when movies and television shows are constantly implying that you guys can't do anything without drinking tea? My background is Mexican, so if they were to show some Mexican dude in a lowrider with, say, a taco dispenser in the dashboard, I think I'd be a little put off. On the other hand, tacos. It turns out Steed has taken them to visit Dr. August de Winter, an insane meteorologist who used to work for the ministry. Mrs. Peel is sent in to pour on the charm and to find out what he knows about the destroyed weather shield.
Oh, even as a boy, when Nana taught me the naming of the clouds.
Cumulus.
Yes.
Stratocumulus.
Oh, yes.
Nimbus.
I discovered then nothing beats a good lashing.
Meanwhile, outside, Steed spots an oddly placed phone box, and when he approaches it, a windstorm kicks up, and then there's a blizzard, and then someone who looks like Emma Peel shoots him. Then he wakes up back at Emma Peel's place where the two flirt while she plays the piano. Seriously.
I did find a clue at Sir August's.
Wonderland weather.
So they pay a visit to Wonderland Weather, where the lady at the front desk seems reluctant to let them in until Steed mentions the name August de Winter. Meanwhile, de Winter is in a conference room with a bunch of people dressed in various colored teddy bear costumes.
You all know who I am, and I know all of you, but you cannot know one another.
And this is the best way he could think of to hide their identities. This movie kills me. And speaking of killing, when two of the bears indicate that they would like to resign, de Winter kills them with a couple of poison darts. Those costumes must be thinner than they look. Then, while giving Peel and Steed a tour of their weather manufacturing facilities, the front desk lady is called away, leaving our heroes to just, roam free. So naturally, they walk right into the conference room with the two dead bodies, and Peel recognizes them as fellow scientists. Next, after spotting more teddy bear people, they decide to split up. Steed finds himself on a loading dock and fights off a bunch of leather-jacketed goons with his umbrella. A couple of them manage to speed away in a van, but not before, in what can only be described as the laziest screenwriting ever, they leave behind a conveniently placed, highly important clue. In another part of the factory, Peel is attacked by one of those teddy bears, and when the mask comes off, the woman looks exactly like her. But when John Steed shows up, the doppelganger straight up goes and jumps off the roof. Does she die? Does that bear suit have a jetpack? Who knows? This movie doesn't bother to tell us. Steed and Peel simply exchange some more witty small talk.
I thought I was seeing double.
That makes two of us.
And then John Steed is suddenly on a double-decker bus meeting with mother and father. Next August, De Winter tests his weather targeting system by sending a bolt of lightning at a, I don't know what that is. Then it's back to Steed and Peel, where they have another emotionless, exposition-filled conversation, this time while playing chess. Then, to reveal that father is secretly working with De Winter, we see father and De Winter playing croquet while they talk about how they're secretly working together. Subtle. Meanwhile, Steed and Peel are heading back to pay De Winter another visit when they're attacked by, get this, a swarm of remote-controlled mechanical wasps. Honestly, it would have been way more effective to just pull up next to him in a car and open fire, because these things suck ass. Most of them just kill themselves by running into bridges and trees. Anyway, after they escape the wasps by pretty much doing nothing, they meet Alice, another agent from the Ministry, who fends off a bad guy in the trees using a machine gun because Hollywood knows that old ladies plus machine guns is comedy gold. So the three head over to De Winter's mansion on foot, but he knows they're coming because of course he has a hidden camera and a peacock. Look, I've seen enough movies to realize that overkill is just par for the course when it comes to evil genius supervillains, and convoluted schemes and overly elaborate weapons and torture devices just come with the territory. But oh my god, this guy has figured out a way to weaponize weather. And the best way he can come up with to kill John Steed and Emma Peel, who have been completely unarmed to this point in the movie by the way, is robot insects? And his surveillance system that includes sticking a camera in the tail feathers of a peacock instead of, I don't know, affixing it to a tree or a fence or the side of his house? This movie's stupid. So now they find themselves at one of those hedge mazes, and instead of walking around it, they decide to go through it because, you know, fun. Also, they decide to split up because the script needs them to do that for the next part. Peel ends up falling through a hole in the ground while Steed runs into De Winter. They do that fight talk thing before De Winter sends Steed's umbrella up into the air, and instead of keeping his eye on his opponent, Steed is distracted by the airborne umbrella, you know, like highly trained secret agents are wont to do. When his umbrella finally floats back down, De Winter is gone and evil Peel knocks him out. Inside the mansion, Peel is strapped to some sort of device while De Winter says villain stuff. Back outside, Alice finds Steed knocked out and revives him. Wait, they just left him out there? If he was unconscious, they could have easily killed him or restrained him or anything. Inside, De Winter is dancing with a drugged up Peel, and just as he leans in for a non-consensual kiss, the doorbell rings. He answers it to find Alice, who holds him at gunpoint and demands to know the whereabouts of Mrs. Peel, who's already wandering around the mansion trying to escape. She finds herself in a weird MC Escher-like stairwell with each doorway somehow leading to the exact same room. Totally random. Luckily and conveniently, Steed is just strolling leisurely outside and taps on a window with his umbrella for some reason. Then Alice gets knocked out and Steed and Peel are suddenly at Steed's apartment. I am not making this up. The two engage in more monotone flirting before mother and father burst in and arrest Mrs. Peel.
Nothing I could do about it, Steed.
Next, Steed heads to the Ministry archives where he meets with an invisible agent to find out more about that clue that he found earlier in the movie. Guess he forgot about it until now. The invisible man tells Steed about how father is working with De Winter and also about an island in the middle of London where De Winter controls the weather. Next, De Winter unveils his big plan to a room full of world leaders.
You will buy your weather from me.
Then Alice shows up to tell Mother that Father is working with De Winter. Then Mother confronts Father, but is distracted by the two Mrs. Peels and is thrown from his wheelchair. Then Father, Evil Peel, and Real Peel get into a hot air balloon for some reason and head for De Winter's base. Then, when everybody's distracted, because that happens a lot in this movie, Real Peel climbs out and sabotages the balloon. She jumps out in the nick of time before it crashes, killing both Father and Evil Peel. Seeing the explosion, Steed shows up. The two kiss and then hightail it over to that secret island in giant hamster balls, because I guess a canoe just wouldn't look as cool. De Winter sees them coming and lets them in via one of his phone boxes, but check this out. He's literally got them in a cage. Why not just keep them there? I hate this movie. Anyway, Peel splits off to disarm the weather machine while Steed goes off to find De Winter. But De Winter's not up in here trying to get caught, so he attempts to stop Steed by, destroying his own base. It doesn't work though, because apparently he forgot that John Steed has an umbrella. Meanwhile, Emma Peel is fighting one of De Winter's goons on some steel cables to make the fight seem more interesting. She wins, of course, and gets on with her sabotaging. At his control panel, De Winter is making the weather outside worse and worse. Then John Steed shows up and the two face off in an epic battle, but still find time to talk shit.
Not bad for an amateur.
I'm not one to boast, Sir August.
Finally, Steed gets the best of De Winter and stabs him through the gut. And then he gets struck by lightning. And then he gets sucked up by a tornado or something. I don't know, it's all too stupid. Over at the weather machine, Mrs. Peel unplugs it and all the weather goes back to normal. But of course, the base goes into self-destruct mode because this movie just won't end. And to absolutely no one's surprise, they manage to escape and join Mother on a rooftop for some celebratory champagne and dreams of a sequel that will never be. This movie. As I mentioned earlier, The Avengers was based on the 1960s British television series of the same name. That show starred Patrick Macnee as John Steed and Diana Rigg as Emma Peel. In fact, Macnee made a cameo in this movie as the Invisible Man. Reportedly, Diana Rigg was also offered a role, the part of Alice, the machine-toting old lady, but after reading the script, she wisely declined. But oddly enough, the script probably wasn't even the biggest problem with this movie. The original cut was nearly 2 hours long, but after a poorly received test screening, Warner Brothers had it chopped down to just under an hour and a half. That's like 25% of the movie, and it shows with seemingly random dialogue, sudden location shifts, and plot points that lead to nowhere. If it sucked at 2 hours long, at 90 minutes, it both sucked and made no sense. And with a $60 million budget, a pretty nice chunk of change for 1998, Warner Brothers had high hopes for this movie. But much like another movie that came out with high expectations that summer, 1998's Godzilla, that big budget did not translate into a big hit. But unlike Godzilla, which actually turned a profit, the Avengers didn't even break even, only recouping about $50 million of that $60 million budget. It was a flop at the box office, a flop with audiences, and a flop with critics, currently hovering at about 5% on Rotten Tomatoes. And can we talk about Sean Connery for a second? He is not why this movie sucks, but he does suck in this movie. And it's a shame because at a time when big budget remakes and superhero movies were starting to take over, he seemed to be game. But between this movie and later his role in the terrible The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, it seemed like things were just maybe passing him by. Not so much in terms of his acting ability, I mean, he's still Sean Connery, but maybe in terms of his ability to select a good script? In fact, it's been rumored that the failure of The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen combined with the failure of this movie led to Sean Connery's decision to retire from acting, so, you know, just another reason to hate this movie. So The Avengers. Is it watchable? The only thing that saves this movie from being completely unwatchable is its production values. The big budget is evident with some decent if not stupid special effects sequences and some impressive set design, so it at least has the look of a decent movie. But it certainly doesn't play like one. In fact, it often doesn't play like a movie at all. Much of the connective tissue that brought the plot together must have been left on the cutting room floor. It's less like watching a movie and more like watching a collection of clips from a movie. You feel like you're watching a 90-minute trailer of the movie you're watching. And the film almost seems to be aware of this. The audience often learns about what's going on, not through watching events unfold on screen, but through the character straight up telling us through lengthy and lazy exposition. Toss in the performances, well, okay, Ray Fiennes is whatever, and Uma Thurman, I'm not gonna lie, in a better movie, her performance would be fine, but Sean Connery?
I have forgotten more than those fools at the ministry ever knew.
Yikes. Well, that's another one in the books. Join me next time when I watch about a dozen A-list actors embarrass themselves in movie 43. And as always, do us a favor, subscribe.